and welcome to Island Artcast, uncovering the creative industry with me, Olivia Savage, as your host. Here we talk about all things art, and each week I'll be joined by inspiring max creatives to discuss creative careers, as well as burning topics in the art world today, to keep that creative mind of yours in action. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Island Artcast, and today we have lots to talk about. So on the show, our usual structure is to release 2 episodes every month addressing different topics, and in light of Pride this month, we're dedicating both of our June shows to discussions surrounding LGBTQ+ in creativity, because there's just too much to fit into one episode. Today, I'll be talking to musicians who also identify as LGBTQ+. So to jump straight in, it's no secret that the Isle of Man has a history of being behind the times with embracing diversity and change and the ever-growing education out there surrounding the LGBTQ+ community. We've come a long way in recent years, it has to be said, and to give a little history to our listeners, 1992 saw the first drastic change to law when private and consensual acts of male homosexuality were decriminalised. From there, things continued to improve. So employment protection against discrimination came into legislation in 2006. Gender identity recognition, meaning that transgender people could change their legal gender, was passed as a law in 2009. The right for same-sex couples to adopt children was passed in 2011. And more recently, same-sex marriage was decriminalised in 2016. So it's late, but it's happening. And today we're going to unpick how that has affected people from the community during their life on the island. So my first guest today is Jenni Smith. Say
Hello.
Hi, Jenni. Also known as Soundcheck Jenni.
Jenni from Soundcheck.
And Soundchecks, Jenni runs Soundcheck, which is a music project for young people, and also in a band called Half Naked Headline. And so to give a little background about how you're involved in the community is you are gay and you've been active for many years in sort of supporting and protesting LGBT rights.
Yeah, I mean, I already knew I was gay when I first moved to the island when I was 14. And it was very obvious, not that I didn't face discrimination where I used to live, but it was very obvious when I moved over here that it was something that was quite... Everyone was very ignorant about it. I say everyone, but everyone that I came into contact with, at least, especially within my school. Like, I was out at home, but when I moved over here, I wasn't out, and I did everything I could to not be noticed as a gay person, because I knew that I would face extreme discrimination. It didn't last very long. I told one person, and it's the Isle of Man. Yep. So the next day, the entire school knew. And since then, really, because I was kind of forced to be out, I just had to be out and proud and loud about it. Because I thought, well, I don't see many other people fighting it. At that age, I'm sure there were people much older than me that were, but at my age, there wasn't anybody else fighting about it. So I was like, well, if I'm the only one, I've got to fight for myself. And if I'm not the only one, I've got to fight for the people that aren't out yet so that they can come out. Yeah. And that's kind of been my involvement ever since.
Yeah. So it's like you didn't intend to initially come out as that, but you're like, I'm here now. It's flat out and we're going to talk about it, kind of thing. So my second guest today is Cara Varetto, who also helps out at Soundcheck.
I do.
Cara is non-binary and a drag king.
Mm-hmm. I am indeed.
And last but not least, my third guest is Mathea Lace.
Hello.
Mathea is the bass player, that's right, of Half Naked Headline, and is transgender and a drag queen.
Yes.
So all of my 3 guests have grown up on the island and so know well of how the island embraces diversity, and despite your individual challenges, all have found acceptance, freedom and friendship through their love of creativity. And they've come on today to share their stories of navigating through the world and the power of creativity. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hello.
To give a little context, you're all friends and you all live together, right?
More or less.
Living
together.
Yeah?
we're all friends, and these guys live together, and I'm around a lot. So.
Right, okay. Like an honorary housemate. Yeah. Jenni, I'll start with you. We talked about it a tiny bit just before, but what was your experience like of growing up on the island, and how has the LGBTQ+ community helped you?
Well, like I said, you know, I moved over to the island when I was quite young, and it was at one of those ages where you're still trying to find yourself and figure out your identity. But I did know that I was gay from quite a young age. And, you know, moving over to the island, the way that people seem to view homosexuality was very negative. And I guess it felt quite lonely at the time because I felt like I was kind of one of the only ones. You know, there was a couple of older people that I kind of met when I first moved over. There was one or two gay men. Not very many gay women, certainly not in my school. Well, there were, they just weren't out, obviously. And it was difficult when I did first come out, or rather when I was dragged out by somebody in my school. You know, there was things that I was getting into fights. People were throwing food at me and rocks and all sorts of stuff like that, and name calling. And you know, I had to harden up pretty fast. Yeah. You know, when I did eventually find my place within the community, which was, you know, as a young person attending the youth club, which was a youth club at the time called Soundcheck. It wasn't that anybody else there was LGBT or anything like that. It was more that it was just a kind of acceptance, you know. And I felt like I'd kind of found my people, and I got into a band and stuff like that. And that's kind of the thing that I suppose helped me focus on the future a little bit more, because I was like, well, there are some people that will accept this. There are some people that are okay with this. And it tended to be, at the time when I was young at least, the more creative side of people that were like that.
Yeah. I suppose with creativity as well, like, people need to express themselves through something. And so if you can all find that common ground of we're all going through something here, whether that's how they identify, mental health issues, whatever. Yeah. And they kind of need to free themselves through that. Is that kind of how you found like-minded people? Yeah,
that's kind of how I found like-minded people. And like at the same time as well, you know, back then the word tomboy was used quite a lot. Yeah. Which I was described as quite often. And like I said, within that club that I went to, there was very few girls. Do you know what I mean? Right. So yeah. I was kind of like, you know, and there was a few girls there that I was in a band with, and they were all absolutely fantastic and accepting, but they were all quite girly as well. So I still felt like I didn't quite fit in with them. And then when I met all the lads who really didn't care about my sexuality, you know, that's where I really felt like I'd found my place, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And then that led me on to finding another youth club, which was it was very new at the time, and it was LGBT youth. And again, that was in its infancy, and the staff themselves were still learning, and it was a bit of us teaching them just as much as they were teaching us, sort of thing. Wow. And that's still going today, and it's grown massively. But you know, that really helped me as well to see adults that did actually accept me, if you know what I mean, and weren't just like, oh, you're too young to know your sexuality, or oh, it's just a phase, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? They were there to help, and it was nice to see that, you know, there are other people outside of my age group as well that actually see us for who we are. Yeah. Yeah. Mathea, the same question to you. What was your experience of growing up on the island here?
Well, I was born on the island and everything else, and my parents were problematic, to say at least. I grew up with my dad, who was very homophobic and very traditional based. My mum also didn't really understand sexuality and everything else. So growing up inside from a very young age, I knew that I thought I was just a gay boy growing up. I never told anyone, but inside I was like, this is the normal thing, because that's all I knew. Yeah. And when I turned about 5-6 years old, that's when I started looking at my sister and stuff like that, and I was like, I want to be like you. But it wasn't like I want to be like your personality and everything else. Like, I knew that I wasn't gonna have the same body as my sister and everything else. And I remember sitting my mum and my sister down and asking them, like, I want to be a girl. I think this is the right thing for me. And they both sat down and told me everything wrong about being a girl, all the problems and everything else. And I just kind of repressed those feelings back, and I was like, they've made this sound horrible and everything else. Like, no, I don't want to be a girl in that case then. And as I got older, there was other issues in the family, and there was a lot of arguments, a lot of trauma and everything else. And I eventually was forced to come out to my family when I was 13, 14 years old.
Wow. So still really young.
Yeah. It wasn't my choice. It was my brother who found out from one of my friends who told him that I was bisexual. And he told my mum on her birthday. And then I kind of got cornered in the house. And obviously it not being the right time, I felt very attacked by it and very forced into it. So I tried to segregate myself from people. And I remember, because at the time when I was about 13, I also started Soundcheck. And Jenni was working there. And I ended up going there and telling Jenni about it and what happened. And she helped me through a lot of it to try and like calm me down and get me to go back home again and just have a talk with them about it. And then when I was about 15, 16, these feelings of wanting to be a girl again started coming up as well. So it was a very questioning point. I was also going through a lot of like mental health issues and everything else. And again, family issues were still continuing. And I started trying to explore more about clothes, makeup, dyeing my hair. And I had a small group of friends who I was close with. And when I say small, it was about 2 or 3 people. They didn't mind like who I was and everything else. Like, I used to get bullied for the way that I looked. And just for trying to find out who I was, people in the public eye weren't supportive. My parents weren't supportive. Whenever I tried to walk out the house with just some makeup on, my mum would be the first one to be like, well, can you not get ready at your friend's house? Like, what if the neighbours see you leave the house? And it was like, no, I can walk out this door with a full face of makeup on if you can, so yeah. I'm going to do it. I learned very quickly who I could trust and who I couldn't. And I knew that my family weren't people who I could trust with these situations. Like, my dad basically disowned me as soon as I came out when I was 14 years old and stopped contact with him. He was not a nice person. Same with my older brother. I stopped contact with him because he was not supportive either and was just like our dad in very many ways. When I turned 18, I finally managed to move out. I finally just felt a lot of relief that I didn't have to have people looking out over my shoulder 24/7. That's when I started buying the clothes that I wanted, dyeing my hair the way I wanted it, able to go out on nights out with full face of makeup and look how I wanted and feel how I wanted. And that's when I finally came out as transgender to my friends. And I was expecting this whole scenario of people being like, what, really? Like, oh my God, like, what is this about? But everyone who I told was just like, okay, do you want to come out for coffee tomorrow? Like, I'm free. And it's just like, what? Like, where's this whole big thing? Like, everyone's been at me all my life about questioning the way I looked and how I was and everything else. And they just made it seem like it was just the tiniest thing in the world. And it was just like, well, that's you. That's fine. Like, that doesn't change anything. So that was a massive change to my experience in life. That was finally when I was comfortable of new people who I'd meet on nights out. I would come out to and they'd just be completely fine about it. Some people were very questioning, some people were quite negative, but the majority were very supportive of it. And it's helped me push through today to help other people out and be like, there is a community of people who do agree with you, do support you. And obviously I come from a family that disowned me now, but that's the best thing about being in this community is that you can choose your family and the people who support you and the people that you want to surround yourself with. But through the years, there's been ups and downs. It's mainly been positives, but there have been a couple times on the Isle of Man that I've realised still how backwards it is and how in people's heads it's still not a thing. They don't believe it's a thing. You're just mentally insane and shouldn't be allowed out in public, and maybe should say like a trigger warning. I've been attacked twice on the Isle of Man for being transgender. One of them was quite bad and I ended up in hospital. The police tried to help, but that was 3 years ago now, and they know who did it, but he still hasn't been arrested.
The first time you were attacked, the one that I was there, I remember speaking to the police officer, and they were kind of trying to make out like it was just like a drunken fight, when actually what happened was Mathea was stood outside the takeaway, and there was a group of people in one of the flats across the road, and they started shouting things down at her and, you know, videoing her and stuff, and they came down and you know, eventually they attacked her. I turned around and said, you know, this is a hate crime. And the police officer at the time said, no, this isn't a hate crime. I'm from England, I've seen hate crimes, this isn't a hate crime. And I'm like, how is this not a hate crime? Like, they're attacking her simply for being transgender, and they just completely refused to see it as that. And those people were never brought to justice either, were they?
No.
It was just written off as, oh, it's just a bunch of drunk people just having a fight.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely not what it was.
That's so crazy. And do you think that's like to do with the sort of small community on the island and this sort of sheltered attitude, I guess, towards, you know, not being as progressive?
I do think that a lot of people on the Isle of Man, including people in the police force and stuff like that, who are very much still, if it's not seen, it's not a problem. There's a lot of LGBT police officers who I've spoken to, and they're very supportive and have always tried to be helpful in every way that they can.
You know, I have to say, obviously not to distract it all from the real struggles that you've gone through, but I'm completely in awe of your story. Like, the way that you're now here and talking about it is just incredible. And the fact that your journey started from you recognising something from as young as 5 years old, you know, when you're really trying to figure out what the world is, as well as, you know, at that age, as well as yourself. And it comes across to me like it's really through the power of knowing who you are and really believing in that, and finding, even just because I know that you said you had a small group of like 2 to 3 friends, but that's really all it took for you to take that first step and being like, I can start talking about this, I can start you know, being more confident in this, and I can start expressing this and stuff. And that's a really empowering story. So I'm entirely in awe of you. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Clara, I can't see you from the mic.
Sorry, I had it behind
I'm coming over to you. Can you share your experience of growing up on the island and your journey?
Yeah, so I suppose in contrast to Mathea, I've got quite a different backstory. For me, my mum was like a core support in my upbringing. She supported me through everything. She never questioned or made me question who I was. For as long as I remember, I've always been interested in girls and never questioned it. In primary, I gave a girl flowers because I just thought they were pretty and thought she was pretty. I didn't really have any friends during primary school. Primary school for me was quite tough. I knew I was different, but I didn't feel different. I just felt like I was kind of a mixture of the two. Without actually knowing the term non-binary at the time, I just knew I was somebody but with the wrong plumbing or whatever. It was only when I got to high school, you know, I first learned the derogative term for lesbian, that I was like, that's me. It came about that somebody who did come out got absolutely publicly ridiculed, and that was around the time I thought about coming out to my friends. And yeah, so throughout high school I repressed a lot of thoughts and feelings. Reflecting back, I did have massive gender dysphoria. I thought at one point that I had to be a boy to be with a girl. And then it was only when I left high school and I went on a holiday for a couple of weeks with my mum. I don't know what it was, whether it was a mixture of just getting off the island, the holiday itself, or the fact that my mum supported me, that I managed to be able to express who I was. I came back to the island, went to college, and college was the best thing for me. I was able to explore gender and sexuality. I had my first relationship there. After finding out LGBT Youth Club, I actually found the word non-binary and it fit. It was also around the time that I started to get interested in boys, but not in like a sexual tense. And I was like, what is this? Because for me, it's kind of the opposite. I've always been like, I'm interested in girls, blah, blah, blah. And then I had an epiphany of like, I'm straight? No. So it was quite a very different contrast there. So I found terminology that fit right for me, like panromantic, gynosexual, and non-binary. And that's who I am. However, it is easy to just say I'm queer because I'm all colours of the rainbow. And yeah, I was fortunate to be able to explore this, and with the support of my mum as well. I love her to pieces, and she doesn't half try. She has struggled with me being non-binary. She does sometimes worry that, you know, she's going to lose her like daughter in that respect, but she's not horrible or like makes me question anything. She's just trying as best she can, and I respect that. She's a real blessing in it. Without her, I don't think I'd be half the person I am today. After leaving college, I found that work, particularly, I struggled to come out with. I found it very, very sexist environments, quite cis-normative. If I wanted a uniform, it was either you have to pick in ladies' wear or men's wear, and it's like, well, I just want something that feels comfortable. If I questioned wanting like men's shoes, it'd be like, well, why? Why would you want them? Like, well, you've got perfectly good shoes over here, and it's like, well, they feel uncomfortable, you know. And it's nothing to do with the gender aspect. It's just clothes at the end of the day. And I found a friends group as well that are a mixture of LGBT, and really being able to find my confidence as well of my gender identity and my sexual orientation, and actually my like own confidence and personality as well. When I turned 18, I started experimenting with having a beard and generally dressing more masculine, so using a binder and a packer, which is like a fake penis essentially, and yeah, feeling really confident and really like empowered to be able to do that. And especially with being involved with previous charities, Manx Rainbow Association, and now being involved with Isle of Pride, I went out to clubs to see what they would respond to having somebody who is non-binary, or to some others presenting as, possibly trans. For the most part, found it quite good, but there have been a few incidences with bathrooms. I had one chap in Bordello's. I went and used the loo and came out, and I remember him. I was just washing my hands and I looked in the mirror because it's your instinct to be a bit obviously on edge. So the door opened and he just made like eye contact with me immediately. Walked over, put his glass down, and he was like, "You're in the wrong bathroom." And it was only thankfully that I had my mate at the time flew out of the bathroom, half unzipped, like, "Hi," blah, blah, and then actually thankfully knew the lad and just distracted him when I got out of the situation. But if he wasn't there, my mate, I don't know how that would have went, especially with the fact that he just went in there just to talk to me. He didn't go into the bathroom, which I felt very uncomfortable. But I didn't tell the bar staff. I didn't tell the bouncers, because I didn't feel like it would be believed. I didn't feel like it would be even remotely a concern to anyone, quite frankly. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of LGBT people feel most part of our lives. I think anybody who's bullied remotely feels like they won't be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. I was in year 7, just going back a little bit. I was very into my sport, so it's very androgynous looking. And my first PE lesson, I walked in, all the girls in there just stopped and looked at me and squealed and was like, "Why is there a boy in here?" And I just groaned and went back to the PE teachers and was like, "Can you please convince them that I'm a girl?" At the time. And I've been picked on throughout year 7 for looking or not convincing others that I'm a girl. I remember one person in particular actually held me up by my collar in year 7 and just like presented me to their friends, like, "Isn't it a boy? Isn't it a boy?" And then it was only when their friends were like really embarrassed by what they were doing or whatever they were thinking, ran off, that she like threw me to the side. But it hasn't damaged me as a person. It has kind of made me realise that there's a lot of potential for growth and education. Obviously those experiences were horrible at the time, but I felt they were short-lived, and especially having the support group that I have now, friends and my mum as well. It's really made kind of that comfort in knowledge, in support, in just being able to have a good time as well. And going back onto present day, it's mostly why I became a drag king. Well, not only recognised that we didn't have a drag king on the island, and I was like, fine, I'll step up. Yeah. And poetry is something that I do as a drag king currently, but it's something I've always done. It was always just like a pastime thing for me. It never really dawned on me, until I did a poem for National Poetry Day and just read it through with Jenni. Jenni was quite taken aback that I had this skill, which I didn't really think it was a skill or anything, but I was quite flattered, and I put it on Facebook, and the amount of feedback it got, it was just a poem that I wrote myself called The Shadow, and basically about hide and seek, playing with the kids, what I used to do with up at ESC. Yeah, it really took off, so I just thought I'll do that, and it's been a way to be able to express my gender identity, be able to express hot topics, and important moments in my life as well as others, in a kind of entertainment way with like a bit of comedy to it as well. But yeah, I don't think I would have got here without all the experiences of my life, particularly again with my friends and my mum as well. So yeah, it's kind of a lot has accumulated to where I am now.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
been
definitely
because of a lot of support as well.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's me.
And thank you to all of you for coming on and sharing your stories today, because I know it, like you were saying before, you must get asked a lot of questions, a lot of the same questions a lot of the time. But I think it's really important to create a space where you can just explain from your point of view, you know? And one thing that I always think is a huge problem for the Isle of Man in particular, and this sort of sheltered attitude of not being as open to embracing change and learning new things. But I think what a lot of people now are trying to do is normalize that conversation of, if you don't know, that's fine too. You can say, can you tell me, you know?
I think ignorance breeds hate, and then people teach other people that hate, and it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
So what we do with our music and what Cara does with their poetry is it's much about expressing ourselves and possibly getting our frustrations and anger out there. You know, you see us on stage and like I'm like really angrily shouting at everyone. I mean, it's a punk band, what you expect, but you know, it's just as much about getting your frustrations and your emotions out as much as about educating people.
Hi everyone, my chat with Jenni, Cara and Mathea addressed so much to do with LGBTQ+ on the Isle of Man that we decided to split this show into 2 episodes. Part 1 has reached its end, but you can tune in to Part 2 in just 2 weeks' time to carry on spreading awareness throughout Pride Month. Part 2 will delve more into the power of creativity on both exploring your identity and mental health, and using it to reach out to others and delivering important messages to the public. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and welcome you to tune in next time. If you are listening to this on its release date on Friday, you'll be getting psyched for tomorrow's Pride celebrations at the Villa Marina. Cara, Mathea and Jenni will all be helping out at the event to spread love and awareness of LGBTQ+, so make sure you head down to celebrate Pride. But before you do that, go ahead and hit subscribe or follow or rate us or whatever your podcast platform lets you do to support the show. Thanks to all our listeners out there and to my guest today. See you next episode.